Okay, so as you guys know, there's a lot of stuff going on right now with the race in California 25, right? So I have a couple of big things for you. They're going to be separate videos, but this story here is very, very important because it is a literal smear, by definition smear, and it's very important to note this, okay? So essentially what has happened is, of course, the smears against Cenk have amplified. There's this one person named Mendoza something something who is basically doing Oppo research for Christy Smith, okay? And that means just churning through old content of Cenk Uygur, right? And just posting it online, okay? So that's essentially what she does. That's her entire job. What a sad, sad life that is. But basically, a New York Times piece was wrote about this, okay? And so Cenk Uygur had on David Duke, okay? And some people were trying to act as if Cenk bringing on David Duke was like this thing, even though mainstream media outlets have brought on David Duke. And Kyle links to this video where it just shows, Cenk like just shutting down David Duke completely and all of his lies and BS. And he says, "This is stunning. New York Times at Jenny Medina claimed Cenk Uygur said David Duke is, quote, of course not a bigot. This is the interview she was citing. They should immediately retract and apologize." So he then follows this up by saying, "This is how New York Times and Jenny Medina described Cenk Uygur pummeling David Duke. Shameful. Time for immediate retraction and apology." Now, from the article, it says figures, including David Duke. In one clip that circulated on Twitter, Mr. Duke ends an interview by saying, "I am not what you call a racist," to which Mr. Uygur replies, "No, of course not." So this is pretty insane, okay? This is from the New York Times. Now, I know a lot of you guys don't expect much from the New York Times, but I expect the New York Times to have the utmost journalistic, integrity. This is the opposite of that. This is an actual smear. This is a lie because it was a sarcastic "no, of course not" at the end. He literally spends this entire video here in his interview calling David Duke a racist and an anti-Semite. But they don't mention that, and they make him look like he's saying that David Duke is not racist. Now, this, I think, is an example of actually where a libel case is certainly merited, because this is doing obviously significant damage to someone. There's very obvious damages going on, especially to a congressional candidate, and it's a completely made up and fabricated smear, okay? Totally checks all of the boxes completely, and whoever this is, Jenny Medina at the New York Times, Kyle Kulinski, okay, he says, "Time for immediate retraction and apology." There needs to be an immediate retraction and apology, and she needs to be fired. Okay, she needs to be fired from her job. And if I were the New York Times, and you're supposed to be "democracy dies in darkness," or is that the Washington Post? I think that's New York Times. But when you're just making shit up to basically smear people who, obviously the New York Times has a conflict of interest with Cenk Uygur, right? Because Cenk Uygur represents everything that they dislike, right? Everything that's home to the New York Times, they don't like, obviously. So, what they need to do is they need to immediately retract what they said. They need to issue an apology, and the reporter should be fired from her job because she has shown that she's not able to do her job correctly, and this is unacceptable. There's no way she either didn't check the video or she outright purposefully lied. This is unacceptable. It should be immediately retracted. There should be an apology issued by the NY Times and Jenny Medina, and Jenny should be fired from her job. This is absolutely unacceptable, and this is the level of smears that are coming for people like Cenk now. So Cenk 2020, go donate to him, of course, and show your support for his candidacy, because these are all the smears that are coming in.